So you want to try PvP in Star Wars The Old Republic, or at least you've been thinking about it, but I'm sure you've probably had a couple of questions, and you've probably already researched this and may not have had the greatest discovery. I've always said that Star Wars The Old Republic PvP is some of the best in the MMO scene, and I still think that to this day. However, the PvP community itself has gotten a terrible reputation over the last 7 or 8 years, but I do believe personally that that's changed. In this video, I'm going to break down the pros and potential cons of PvP, and I'm going to address the biggest issues first and save the minor ones for later on in the video because I know you guys want the meat and potatoes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. The biggest concern that I hear when I talk about PvP or when I see it in Gen Chat or in the forums, they are talking about the toxicity of player versus player. This is an argument that has never sat well with me, even more so now as I have just gotten older and have changed kind of my thought process around video games. You are going to have toxic people in every area of life, and you're especially going to have them in games. You're not going to be able to really escape that. PvP toxicity is no different than the hardcore raiders or PvE content players, so let's not pretend that there is a huge difference between the two. If your primary reason for not wanting to PvP or not trying it in the game is toxicity, I would honestly say that is not the greatest reason to not play. There have been plenty of ways and systems implemented to kind of take down the toxicity in SWTOR. Like, you can't really be as toxic, at least from a gameplay perspective. But that brings me to the first part that I want to talk about, and that's going to be Premades versus pugs, or should you queue solo, or should you have a group each time. One of the biggest arguments surrounding SWTOR PvP recently is the Premades versus pugs, and a lot of people who queue solo have been getting annoyed that, you know, we have a potential 4, 6, or even 8 stack, you know, queuing up against them and destroying them, or not even playing objective, just farming kills. I have experienced this a little bit in my time playing, especially since they removed ranked last year, but I don't think this is as big a deal as most people think. People often think that the group queue should be changed. It should be a group queue and a solo queue, but this isn't Apex Legends. There's not a million people playing this game, so separating the queues is not feasible and it doesn't make any sense to do. If I'm being honest, I would say I probably go up against a big pre-made 1 out of every 15 or 16 Warzone matches. This does not include arenas, and when it does happen, it's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. Most of the Premades will go in and just damage farm and not really, you know, be interested in the objectives, which I never understood why that would bother a pug, considering, you know, the damage dealing Premades will let you get the win. They just want to damage farm. They don't care about objectives. And I think this is where this discourages newer players, because let's say you're a new one, right? You come in and you're getting globaled left, right, and center, but you end up winning the game. That doesn't make the player feel good. I understand that. But that is a part of learning how to PvP in this game. I think a lot of people think that they're gonna be semi-good when they jump in and then realize very quickly that they are gonna get outplayed at almost every corner, and it does discourage them. And this is where I will say the best thing you can do to get over that as fast as possible is to watch PvP content, is to watch the people that make the guides, the people that know what they're doing. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, toot my own horn here, but you could always watch some of my stuff. But one person I highly recommend that you go watch is Ivano1337. I have honestly fallen in love with some of his videos. I think he does a beautiful job of explanations and, you know, really just conveying what you have to do in PvP to survive. A lot of you know, game sense and things like that. So if you haven't, you know, checked out his channel, I will link it here in the description. Go tell him that Noble sent you. I would recommend watching his content just to give you a little bit of an idea of what you're up against. There are some other streamers that do PvP, but I don't really go into the Twitch side of things, so if I haven't mentioned you, I'm sorry, but there are some other good ones out there. But moving on, if toxicity is something that you're concerned about, that really shouldn't be something to really concern yourself with. There are always going to be people in ops chat that talk a lot of talk, and that's all that it is. I think you need to be able to kind of be able to tune that stuff out. Even I do that at times. I just tune it out and enjoy the match. The next thing that I want to talk about really quickly is gear and what to expect. If you want to cut down on the toxicity in PvP, I would say do not queue for the arenas, the 4v4, until at least item rating 332. If you're an experienced player, you can get away with 330 and make out okay. But I think what happens a lot of the times is newer players, they just queue in for arena and then they have armor rating 289 or 306 or something like that, and they get absolutely curb stomped by the people in arenas who are, 332, 334, 340, up, like the list goes on. So if you want to make everyone's lives easier, wait to Q4s until you have sufficient gear and until you feel comfortable with your own class enough to focus on other things and other aspects of the game. Ranked PvP is gone, that is a fact, but that doesn't mean that the vibe around arenas has completely changed. Arenas, I like to think of it this way. War zones are for the players who want to get into PvP, get in that low barrier to entry, and arenas are for the people that just genuinely love PvP and are really interested in honing their skills, because let me tell you, if you get really good in arenas, war zones become easy peasy lemon squeezy, and you don't have to do anything about that. You can go in and curb stomp every time you can, and it is honestly a blast sometimes. It can be boring, but most of the time it's fun. So that is my recommendation when it comes to queuing arenas versus queuing war zones. You want to make sure you're adequately equipped in order to handle the 4v4 arenas. Next thing I'll cover real quick is how easy is it to get into PvP? Very easy. The cost to entry, the barrier to entry is very low. You can start queuing as soon as level 10, and honestly that's something I would start doing, because you're not going to have your full rotation, but you're going to be able to get a taste for what it's like at level 80. I used to only level my characters back in the day through doing PvP, so I've done tens of thousands of matches in my 13-year experience playing this game, and it has done wonders for me. You're going to do a lot better at level 80 if you start earlier. That does not mean you're screwed if you reach level 80 and haven't even touched PvP. Like I said, going into regular war zones, the bar is very low to enter. And as far as gearing requirements, while you're in PvP, war zones, you don't have to worry too much about gear. Arenas is where gear really comes into play, so I want you to just hit the queue for the war zone and have fun in that. And if you really like it, you can level up your gear through PvP. There is plenty of things to do. You have a PvP season to complete, like the rewards track. If you are someone who likes to chase things, that's something that kind of gets me into it, but I just like the craft of PvP. I'm not really in it for the rewards. Now, with that being said, is the barrier to entry low? Absolutely, but the skill barrier, the skill floor and skill ceiling is very high. There are videos out there on the best beginner classes to use in PvP, and I highly suggest you pick those up so you get acquainted with, what the roles are and how they play off of each other. But there is a pretty big skill gap, and I don't want you guys to get discouraged, because if you're just starting out on any class, well, even if it's one that's beginner friendly, you're not gonna do well. You're probably gonna lose a lot of games. But eventually you will start winning games, and it'll be because of your contributions to the team. Sometimes it'll be solely because of your contributions to the team. There is a lot of carry potential depending on what you're doing. So if you start PvPing and for the first 2 weeks you're getting curb stomped, don't be discouraged. You will get better. The skill floor and the skill ceiling, it's a huge gap in between. I'm not at the top of the PvP ceiling. There are plenty of other players better than myself, but I am definitely well beyond the floor. I would like to consider myself a little bit in the higher tier of PvPers as far as knowledge goes. I might not be as fast as Ivano, but I would like to consider myself pretty freaking competent when it comes to PvP. So don't worry about the skill gap. You will learn it if you apply yourself. Just like with any other aspect of the MMO, you aren't going to be good at raiding until you raid. You're not going to know these things until you do them over and over and over again. So at the end of this, should you PvP in Star Wars: The Old Republic in 2024? Only you can answer that, but personally, I think you should. It is the most fun I've ever had in an MMO, and I'm probably gonna make some PvEers mad here, but there's always something new to try in war zones and arenas. There's almost nothing new to try in PvE. You still gotta stand in front of the boss, stand at X, don't sit in stupid, and rinse, repeat, damage boss. I'm not meaning to make light of PvE mechanics, but at least in war zones and in arenas, you're usually fighting different people, and you never know what you're gonna be up against, and I think that's fun and exciting. If you are worried about solo queuing, it's okay. I still recommend solo queuing. I solo queue most of the time. I just find it a little bit more enjoyable, but if you have a group of friends, even better. It will make your experience just that much more fun playing with friends. That is undeniable. I hope I've done a decent job of convincing you to give Star Wars The Old Republic PvP a try. You can check out my streams, check out the creators listed in the description. They are going to get you started on the right track, and trust me, as soon as you start, you are not going to want to put this down. I promise you. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Noble, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.